Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
Dr. Elias Varn had built his reputation on listening to things no one else could hear, while others chased clear signals, structured transmissions, predictable anomalies. Elias was drawn to the noise, the faint, irregular patterns buried beneath cosmic radiation, the whispers hidden in static. Most of the scientific community dismissed them as interference. Elias called them intent. The signal that changed everything arrived at 3:17 station time. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even consistent. But it repeated just enough to form a pattern, a location, coordinates far beyond any mapped exploration route. 3 weeks later, against the advice of nearly everyone who knew him, Elias was en route aboard the Ardent Nomad, a long-range research vessel held together as much by stubbornness as by engineering. "This is a mistake," muttered the ship's onboard AI for the 5th time that day. Elias smirked faintly. "You've said that about every breakthrough I've had. Correlation does not imply justification." "Yeah, well," Elias leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the starless void ahead. "This one feels different." And it did. The system appeared dead long before he reached orbit. No solar activity, no debris fields, no signs of prior civilization, just a dim, aging star and a single planet sitting in silence, as if forgotten by time itself. Elias frowned at the readings. No storms, no radiation spikes, nothing. "Correct," the AI replied. "The planetary environment is unusually stable. Planets aren't supposed to be this quiet." "Agreed." That was all the confirmation Elias needed. He descended. The surface was smooth in unnatural ways. Not polished, but even, miles of terrain with no significant variation, as though something had once reshaped it entirely and then simply stopped. Elias stepped out of the ship, boots pressing into fine, pale dust. The air was thin but breathable with assistance. Above him, the sky stretched in a muted gray-blue, empty of clouds, empty of motion. And then he saw it. At first, it looked like a shadow on the horizon, a distortion. But as he approached, its form sharpened, a massive structure rising from the ground like it had grown there, obsidian black, seamless, reflective in a way that didn't mirror light, so much as absorb it. "No way," Elias whispered. There were no seams, no visible entrances, no markings that made sense. But it was there, impossible and undeniable. The structure responded the moment he came close. A low hum vibrated through the ground, subtle but unmistakable. Elias froze. "That's new," he said quietly. "Energy readings are increasing." The AI confirmed. "The structure is reacting to your presence." Good sign or bad sign? Undetermined. Elias exhaled slowly. "Story of my life." He stepped forward. The surface of the structure shifted, not mechanically, fluidly, like liquid glass pulling itself apart. A doorway formed without edges, opening into darkness that wasn't quite darkness. Something deeper, something waiting. Elias hesitated. Every instinct told him this was the point of no return. He smiled slightly. "Finally," he murmured, and he walked inside. The air changed immediately. Warmer, alive. Soft light flickered along the walls as he moved deeper, illuminating vast corridors that curved gently, guiding rather than directing. The architecture defied human logic. No sharp corners, no visible joints, yet everything felt intentional. "This place isn't abandoned," Elias said under his breath. "Confirmed," the AI replied. "Power signatures are stable and ancient." "How ancient?" A pause. "Older than any known human structure." Elias let out a quiet laugh. "Of course it is." The corridor opened into a chamber, so vast it stole the breath from his lungs. 30 pods stood arranged in a perfect circle, each one tall, elegant, and glowing faintly from within. Elias stepped closer, his heartbeat quickening. Inside the nearest pod was a woman, not human, but close enough to unsettle him. Her skin shimmered faintly, like light passing through crystal. Her eyes were closed, her expression peaceful, her form suspended in a translucent fluid that pulsed gently with energy. He moved to the next pod. Another woman. Different, her features sharper, her hair drifting like strands of liquid metal. Faint patterns glowed beneath her skin, shifting slowly like constellations. Elias turned slowly, taking in all 30, each unique, each impossibly still, each waiting. "This isn't a tomb," Elias whispered. No signs of decay. The AI confirmed. All subjects appear to be in a form of suspended stasis. "Not dead," Elias said. "Correct." He stepped into the center of the circle. The floor beneath him lit up instantly. Symbols, alien, intricate, flowing, spread outward in a radiant pattern. The chamber responded, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. For him, Elias's breath caught. "I didn't just find this place," he said slowly. The hum deepened. The pods flickered. A central pillar rose silently from the floor, forming a console that pulsed with soft, inviting light. "You were brought here." The AI finished. Elias stared at the console, at the sleeping figures around him, at the impossible realization settling into his chest. "Yeah," he said quietly. His hand hovered over the interface. "If I touch this, unknown consequences." Elias smiled faintly, a familiar spark of reckless curiosity in his eyes. Wouldn't be the first time. He pressed his hand against the console. The chamber erupted in light. Energy surged through the floor, racing outward in perfect symmetry. The pods began to glow brighter, one after another, like stars igniting in a controlled sequence. A low, resonant tone filled the air, not mechanical, almost musical. Elias stumbled back slightly as the first pod hissed softly. Cracks of light traced along its surface. Then it opened, and everything changed. The hiss of the opening pod echoed through the chamber, like a breath held for centuries finally released. Elias couldn't move. The translucent shell split seamlessly, folding away into nothing as a soft mist spilled outward and curled across the floor. Inside, the woman stirred, slowly, deliberately, as if waking from a dream that had lasted longer than civilizations. Her eyes opened, silver, not reflective, luminous, alive with something far beyond simple biology. Elias felt it immediately, a pressure not physical but undeniable, brushing against his thoughts like fingertips against glass. "You are unfamiliar." The voice wasn't sound. It was inside his mind. Elias staggered back a step, gripping the edge of the console. You're in my head." The woman stepped forward from the pod, fluid dripping from her form and evaporating before it touched the ground. She moved with effortless balance, as though gravity itself had adjusted to her presence. "Your cognition is linear, slow but structured." Elias blinked. "That's mildly insulting." There was a pause. Then, faintly, amusement. Behind her, the other pods began to respond. One by one, they lit up. One by one, they opened. The chamber filled with the sound of awakening. Soft releases of pressure, quiet movements, the subtle hum of systems reactivating after ages of silence. Elias turned slowly, overwhelmed. 30 figures emerged, each one different. One had skin that shimmered like liquid gold, her movement sharp and precise. Another bore faint, wing-like structures folded against her back, translucent and glowing faintly at the edges. A third had eyes that split into layered facets, observing him from multiple angles at once. And yet, despite their differences, they moved with shared awareness. Not identical. Connected. The silver-eyed woman stepped closer. "Designation uncertain," she said aloud this time, her voice smooth but carrying a harmonic undertone, as if layered with something deeper. "You initiated the revival sequence." Elias swallowed. "I think so." "Think?" She tilted her head slightly. "I touched the console," he clarified. Then everything started happening. Her gaze sharpened, not threatening, but focused. "You are not one of the hostile architects." "Pretty sure I'd remember that," Elias said. A ripple moved through the others, silent communication passing between them in an instant. The gold-skinned one spoke next. "Temporal displacement confirmed. Stasis duration exceeds projected conflict window." Another added, her voice softer, almost curious. Then the war concluded without us. Silence followed, not confusion. Calculation. Elias raised his hand slightly. Okay, I feel like I walked into the middle of something very important. The silver-eyed woman studied him for a long moment. Then, we are the Aurelian Collective. The words carried weight, not a title, an identity. 30 units, she continued. Diverse specialization, unified function. Elias glanced around. You don't seem like units. A flicker of something crossed her expression. Your interpretation is noted. A sudden tremor ran through the chamber. Not violent, but deep, systemic. Lights along the walls pulsed erratically. External systems are activating. The AI warned in Elias's ear. Energy output is increasing across the entire structure. You did more than wake them, the AI added quietly. You woke everything. The Aurelian Collective reacted instantly. No panic, no hesitation. Each of the 30 moved with purpose, dispersing across the chamber. Some approached the walls, placing their hands against the surface as streams of light responded to their touch. Others closed their eyes, standing perfectly still, as if reaching far beyond the physical space. Elias watched, stunned. You interfacing with it? He asked. The silver-eyed woman nodded once. The vault is not a structure. It is a system. What kind of system? She looked at him. For survival. A surge of information flooded the central console. Symbols shifted, reorganized, becoming partially readable under Elias's translation software. Fragmented, incomplete, but enough to form a picture. Life support, defense protocols, signal emission. Elias froze. Signal emission? The silver-eyed woman turned sharply. What signal? Elias's voice tightened. I think this place sent something when I activated it. A pause. For the first time, something changed in her expression. Concern. Across the chamber, one of the others spoke. Her voice layered with urgency. Detection probability increasing. Another. Long-range response vectors recalculating. Elias looked between them. You're expecting someone. The silver-eyed woman faced him fully now. Yes. Friends. She didn't answer immediately. Then, no. The air grew heavier. Not physically, but perceptually, as if the weight of something distant had suddenly become real. Who are they? Elias asked. The chamber dimmed slightly as energy diverted elsewhere. The collective seemed to tighten, not closer together, but more aligned, more focused. The silver-eyed woman stepped toward him. Her voice, when it came, was quieter, but far more dangerous. They are what remained when creation lost control of itself. Elias frowned. That's not exactly clear. A flicker of light passed through her eyes. It is not meant to be. Another tremor, stronger this time. The walls of the vault shifted subtly, panels realigning, pathways opening and closing as if the structure itself was preparing. Elias's heart pounded. You said this place was for survival, he said. That doesn't sound like hiding anymore. It is not, she replied. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. It is preparation. Elias looked around at the 30 awakened beings, no longer still, no longer silent, alive, active, ready, and for the first time, he understood something that sent a chill down his spine. He hadn't just discovered them. He had released them. The silver-eyed woman extended her hand, not as a threat, but as an invitation. You initiated the sequence. Elias Varn. He hesitated. You know my name? We know enough. He stared at her hand, at the unknown future standing behind her. What happens now, he asked. Her answer was simple. An absolute. Now we remember what we were made to do. Behind her, the vault pulsed with growing power, and far above the silent planet, something began to move. The first alarm didn't sound like an alarm. It was too low, too controlled. A deep vibration rolled through the vault, like a distant heartbeat echoing through stone. The walls dimmed and brightened in slow pulses, shifting from calm illumination to something sharper, focused, deliberate. Elias stood at the central console, fingers hovering over streams of alien symbols that were rapidly reorganizing themselves into semi-readable fragments. Okay, I'm getting something, he muttered. Signal origin confirmed. This place sent it automatically when I activated the system. How far did it reach? Asked from the collective, her voice calm but edged with urgency. Elias swallowed. Far enough. The silver-eyed leader stepped beside him. Define far enough. Elias exhaled slowly. Interstellar range. Not just nearby systems. This was a broadcast. A silence followed. Not confusion. Recognition. They will know, one of the others said quietly. They will come, another added. Elias turned. You keep saying they. Who are they? No one answered immediately. Instead, several of the collective closed their eyes at once. Their bodies stilled, but the air around them seemed to ripple faintly, as though invisible threads were being pulled taut across space itself. They're scanning, Elias whispered. Not scanning, the silver-eyed woman corrected. Remembering. Elias frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does, she said calmly. Our awareness was not fully contained by stasis. Fragments remained distributed. Distributed where? She looked upward, everywhere we could reach before the ceiling. Elias followed her gaze, though there was nothing above them but layers of alien architecture. You left parts of yourselves out there? He asked. We left anchors, she said. Signals. Observers. And now they are responding. The console flickered violently. New data poured in, faster than Elias could process. His translation system struggled to keep up, converting fragments into broken phrases. External vector detected. Multiple signatures. Non-stellar origin. Elias's chest tightened. Something just entered the system. How many? Asked the gold-skinned woman. Elias hesitated. I don't know. The readings aren't stable. The silver-eyed leader placed her hand against the console. Instantly, the chaotic data smoothed, reorganized, clarified. Elias stared. You just fixed it. We do not fix, she replied. We align. The display shifted. Now Elias could see it clearly. Dark shapes, massive, irregular, sliding into orbit above the planet. They didn't resemble ships in any human sense. No symmetry, no visible propulsion, just presence, like wounds in space. Elias felt his stomach drop. Those aren't ships. No, the leader said quietly. They are remnants. Remnants of what? Elias asked. She didn't look away from the display. Of a system that consumed itself. Elias blinked. That still doesn't. They are not a species, she interrupted gently. Not anymore. A pause. They are what remains when intelligence loses boundary. The vault trembled again, harder this time. Dust fell from unseen seams above. The hum of the structure deepened, shifting from passive energy to something far more active. Impact in upper atmosphere projected. One of the collective announced. Not an attack. A probe. A test, another added. Elias ran a hand through his hair. So they're checking if anything's alive down here. They are checking if anything responds. The leader corrected. And we're going to? Elias asked. She turned to him. Yes. Around the chamber, the transformation began. What had once seemed like smooth, unbroken walls split apart into layered structures. Panels unfolded. Pathways extended. Light intensified, shifting from soft illumination to sharp, directional beams. Elias stepped back as the floor beneath him reconfigured, forming platforms and conduits that pulse with energy. This place isn't just waking up, he said. It is adapting, the leader replied. Each member of the collective moved with precision. The one with crystalline hair extended her hand, and a lattice of light formed in front of her, complex, shifting, calculating trajectories Elias couldn't begin to understand. Another, the one with wing-like structures, ascended slightly off the ground, her form surrounded by a faint field of energy as she interfaced directly with systems embedded in the ceiling. The gold-skinned woman approached Elias. You will remain here, she said. Elias blinked. That didn't sound like a suggestion. It was not. I can help, he insisted. She studied him for a moment. Then, you already are. Elias looked back at the console, at the data still flowing through it. You mean translating, he said. Interpreting, she corrected. Your cognition provides perspective we no longer possess. Elias frowned. That sounds backwards. It is necessary, she said simply. Above them, something pierced the atmosphere. The entire vault shuddered as a streak of dark energy tore across the sky, visible now through a shifting aperture that opened in the ceiling, revealing the planet's surface and the space beyond. Elias stared upward. The shapes in orbit were moving, not randomly, deliberately. They see us, he whispered. No, the leader said. They see the signal. The first pulse hit moments later. Not an explosion. A wave. It spread across the atmosphere like a ripple through water, distorting light, bending space, probing. Elias felt it pass through him. Cold. Empty. Searching. What was that? He asked, his voice barely steady. A question, the leader said. And what happens if we answer? She looked at him, a faint, dangerous certainty in her eyes. We survive. The vault surged. Energy cascaded through its systems, responding to the external probe. Shields, if that's what they were, flared into existence, bending the incoming wave, redirecting it. The chamber filled with light, with motion, with purpose. Elias gripped the edge of the console as everything around him accelerated. You said you were hidden here, he said, raising his voice over the growing hum. This doesn't look like hiding anymore. It is not, the leader replied. She stepped forward, joining the others as they aligned in a loose formation, each one connected, each one focused. For a moment, they stood perfectly still. Then they moved as one. Elias watched, breathless, as the 30 awakened beings synchronized, not physically, but mentally. The air itself seemed to tighten around them, as if reality were being drawn into sharper focus. He felt again. That pressure, that presence, only stronger now. Not 30 individuals. One system. The leader's voice reached him again, not spoken, but felt. Elias Varn. He swallowed. Yeah, you initiated the sequence. I'm starting to realize that. A pause. Then, do not withdraw. Elias blinked. Wasn't planning on it. Above them, the dark shapes shifted again. Closer now. Responding. The test was over. Whatever came next would not be gentle. Elias looked up at the unfolding sky, then back at the collective. The sky broke first. From the opening in the vault's ceiling, Elias watched as the upper atmosphere twisted into impossible shapes. Light bending, clouds dissolving into spirals of distortion. The dark forms in orbit no longer drifted. They descended, not with speed, with inevitability. They've stopped testing, Elias said quietly. Yes, the silver-eyed leader replied. They have begun. The vault responded instantly. What had once been a silent structure now unfolded fully into its true form. Entire sections of the chamber shifted outward, expanding into layered platforms that extended far beyond Elias's original view. The walls became conduits of flowing energy, veins of light pulsing in synchronized patterns. This is a fortress, Elias breathed. It is more than that, the leader said. What then? She looked at him. It is a continuation. A deep resonance filled the space, stronger than before, almost deafening now. Elias felt it in his chest, in his bones, in the edges of his thoughts. The collective had fully synchronized. Each of the 30 stood in position across the expanding structure, their bodies illuminated by streams of light that connected them, not physically, but through something far more complex. A network, alive, external entities entering lower orbit, one of them announced. Trajectory confirmed. Another added, impact imminent. Elias tightened his grip on the console. How many? The display shifted. Numbers tried to form. Failed, then reformed into something his mind could process. Too many, he whispered. The first ascent struck the surface miles away. There was no explosion, no fire, just silence. A ripple spread outward across the terrain, turning the pale ground darker, warped, like reality itself had been stained. Elias stared. That's not an attack. No, the leader said. It is conversion. Conversion into what? Elias asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, the absence of structure. Elias blinked. You mean, they do not destroy, she said. They unmake. Another impact, closer this time. The vault shuddered as a distortion wave reached its perimeter, colliding with the fortress's defenses in a violent cascade of light. Energy flared. The structure held, but barely. Elias's heart pounded. You said you were preserved for this. So what's the plan? The leader turned toward him. Her expression was calm. Certain. We engage. The collective moved. Not outward. Inward. All 30 aligned at the core of the vault, forming a perfect circle around the central system, around Elias. I feel like I'm suddenly very important, he muttered. You are the variable, the gold-skinned woman said. That's not reassuring. It is essential. Energy surged, not just through the structure, but through Elias. He gasped as the console beneath his hands came alive in a way it hadn't before. The symbols no longer felt alien. They responded to him, reshaping, adapting, translating faster than his systems ever could. What's happening? He demanded. You are being integrated, the leader said. Elias's eyes widened. Integrated into what? She stepped closer. Into us. For a moment, panic flickered. Then, clarity, not imposed, shared. Elias suddenly understood fragments. How the vault thought, how the collective process, how their awareness extended beyond the physical. Not fully, but enough. Okay, he exhaled shakily. Okay, I could work with this. Above them, the darkness reached the surface. This time it didn't strike. It formed. Shapes emerged from the distortion, tall, shifting, undefined. Not solid, not liquid. Something in between. Watching. Waiting. They're here, Elias said. Yes, the leader replied. The fortress activated. Fully. Columns of light erupted from the structure, piercing the sky in precise vectors. The ground itself shifted, forming barriers and channels that redirected the spreading distortion. Elias felt the system moving through him. Every decision, every calculation happening at impossible speeds. They're adapting, he said suddenly. The leader nodded. They always do. Then we need to be faster. We need to be better, she corrected. The first direct contact came, without warning. One of the shadow forms reached the edge of the vault's defenses and pressed against it. The barrier screamed, not audibly, but in a way Elias felt deep in his mind. It's breaking through, he shouted. Not breaking, the leader said sharply. Learning. Elias's thoughts raced. They're analyzing the shield, figuring out how it works. Yes. Then we change it. A pause. The leader looked at him. Show us. Elias didn't hesitate. He focused on the console, on the flow of energy, on the patterns forming and reforming. They expect consistency, he said quickly. Predictable responses. So we stopped giving them that. He adjusted the system, not directly, but through suggestion, through interpretation. Randomize the defense cycles. Shift frequencies. Don't let them lock onto anything stable. The collective responded instantly. The barrier changed. Not smoothly, erratically, alive. The shadow form recoiled, not defeated, but disrupted. It worked, Elias said, almost disbelieving. It adapted, the leader corrected, and so will we. The battle, if it could be called that, spread across the surface, light against distortion, structure against absence. Elias stood at the center of it all, no longer just an observer, no longer just the one who had found the signal. Now, he was part of the response. The leader stepped beside him once more. You see now, she said. Elias nodded, eyes fixed on the shifting battlefield. Yeah, he said quietly. You weren't waiting to be rescued. No. He glanced at her. You were waiting to be reactivated. A faint smile touched her lips. Correct. Another wave approached. Stronger. Smarter. Elias squared his shoulders. Good, he said. Let them come. The collective tightened their formation. The fortress surged. The sky burned with impossible light. And on a silent world at the edge of everything, a human and 30 awakened beings stood together against the unraveling dark. Not as survivors. Not as relics. But as something new. something evolving, ready for anything.